With our MOA, it is between CCSD and the Navajo tribe. What will the consequence be as a result of the split? Second, the partnership that I had mentioned earlier with the split, how long will it take to build positive relationships? Number 3, how long will it take to gain stability of services for our children who receive bilingual, special education, gifted, and early childhood? 4, public school is a multi-layered process with the sole purpose of improving student achievement with all ethnicities involved. This process includes intercultural competence and collaboration. Since being here, I have heard staff and community members tell their stories of their relationships with each other, with all ethnicities. I have heard stories that go back at least 2 generations. This, to me, is a key concept of CCSD, that within the district itself, positive relationships of families of different diversity is involved. I am concerned of, within the boundaries of CCSD, the creation of the separation. I am concerned of how this will affect the relationships of the communities involved. I am also concerned of the emotional stability of our students. How are they going to react with this boundary that is wanting to split our communities? How is this going to affect their education, their motivation, and their reason for being where they are? A key point is that we must look at the best interest of our students within the public school system, and that would be looking at the impact of separation, because historically we do have history about separation in many different ways, and we can all definitely say that a separation like this is a negative impact and will have a negative effect on all of the people involved, and this includes future generations to come. In closing, it is important to support our students' emotional and social development, and the concept of building positive kinship with all students, all families, and to bridge our communities are more important than creating a split. We need to build positive collaboration, because this, in my opinion, is the best interest of our public education system that serves this specific region. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Secretary. Before I begin, I'd like to start by reading a statement by one of our fellow board members, Hosky Benali. And it reads, Dear Public Education Department and Secretary Skandera, in my view, my inability to attend and participate in the public hearing today regarding the unwarranted potential of splitting the Central Consolidated School District as being pursued by a few members of the Kirtland community, I would like to submit this memorandum. I've been a CCSD board member for over 5 years. During this time, I've noted previous conversations about moving the Kirtland business office to the Shiprock Administration Complex, where the superintendent's office is located. The only objection for now moving the CCSD employees to Shiprock that was, as stated at the time, that such a move was not feasible because of the lack of sufficient internet system at the Shiprock Administration Office. At the CCSD board retreat in June 2010, this topic was again discussed. At the time, it was decided that perhaps a feasibility study could be conducted to determine the logistics and the cost that may be associated with the potential of constructing an internet tower across the river at Hogback on the Navajo Nation. Those CCSD board members in attendance gave the superintendent a directive to conduct a feasibility study, but for some unknown reasons, it was not initiated. Again, in the fall of 2011, this topic was discussed at a board meeting in Kirtland during executive session. Again, the board members requested the superintendent to pursue such a study. In March 2011, the board members were informed that a broadband system would be available in CCSD that would allow for the upgrade of the internet system at the Shiprock Administration Complex. It was with this information that the CCSD board, with a majority vote in May 2011, directed the closure of the KBO office and directed the move and related staff members and administrative functions to Shiprock. This resulted in much opposition from the KBO staff and certain members of the Kirtland community. They basically questioned the authority of the CCSD board to make such a decision. This subsequently ended in district court in Aztec, New Mexico in June 2011, of which the district judge made a court decision in favor of the CCSD board. Although there were a number of arguments being made about the split of CCSD, the bottom line of such an effort stems from the closure of the KBO. As previously noted, there was no, quote, voiced opposition for moving the KBO to Shiprock when insufficiency of internet systems existed, but when this was no longer the case, other rationalizations had been created. It was hoped that the PED administrators and New Mexico government officials will be able to determine their decisions by cutting through all the smoke and mirrors that have been created by understanding that the unwarranted chaos coming from a few Kirtland individuals is strictly based on the lack of acceptance of the legal authority of the CCSD board when it directed the closure of the KBO, as rendered by the district judge. It should be noted that the CCSD board has been painted as being adversely biased toward the needs of students, staff, and school facilities in the Kirtland area. But during the 5 years I've been a board member, there has never been a time when the board has voted against any request or needs related to schools in Kirtland. Again, it is hoped that the decision makers do not base their decisions based on emotional opinions, but on factual information. And going back to my own comments, my name is Matthew Sohn, the president of the Central Consolidated School District Board. And I don't know where to begin as far as this particular situation has been brought up. I think a lot of stuff has been covered, a lot of topics addressed, and our response has been provided. But I have to go back to one of the comments made by Mr. Manning, who's with the Kirtland group, Children First, who made the comment, let's go back to 1969. And based on this whole experience, I think that it is exactly going back to 1969, and even before then, going back to some of the darkest days of our nation's history. And this whole experience has been an eye-opening history and civics lesson that I hope from today on that we cannot and should not be forgotten. Some of the words and concepts that come to mind from this whole experience are words that I think a lot of our students have only read in history books, textbooks, such as words about segregation, racism, and of course one of the more common phrases is separate but equal, and the other is Plessy versus Ferguson of the badge of inferiority. And I think that in this whole experience, the proposed split as proposed by the Kirtland group, by dividing the district along reservation lines, is exactly just that. It's creating divisions between our communities. And that's the wrong way to go here. And as far as much of the evidence and facts presented by Mr. Manning and the Kirtland group, it clearly does not meet the three facts listed or stated in their presentation about whether or not this split is in the best interest of the new district, the existing district, and of course public education for the entire state. I mean, it clearly doesn't meet that standard. And even going back to some of the comments that he's brought up about graduations going up if you split. Well, nothing stops Kirtland from having a higher graduation rate by having more parental involvement. I don't think our district has ever prohibited such action. So in that sense, it's a spurious argument. And the other is that aside from some of the information that he's presented, is that there are a lot of other factors that go into the education of our students in our district. Granted, it is a big district. It's comprised of 3 separate communities. We have Newcomb, we have Shiprock, and we have Kirtland areas. But despite our differences, we still are able to come together and make decisions in the best interest of everyone. And there's certainly a lot of room for growth and opportunity, but at the end is whether or not their facts, their information actually meets the standards and requirements under state law of whether it meets the best needs of everyone, especially our students in the district. And just yesterday, our board approved a very, very significant budget that essentially cut over $5 million from our budget. And it wasn't easy. It definitely wasn't easy. And we thought we had to make some tough choices. But luckily, through some planning that occurred throughout the whole year, and among them, some of the decisions, such as the closure of the KBO, the Kirtland Business Office, I mean, we're able to plan, because we're able to plan wisely throughout the whole course of the year. The decisions that we have to make at the end of the year now are not as drastic as what they would be compared to some of our neighboring districts, such as in Gallup and County Schools, who have had to close 3 schools. And of course, the size of our budget cut is roughly about the same size as theirs. But luckily, we're not able to do that because we're able to plan accordingly by keeping our district together. And going back to what Board Member Hosky Benali had echoed, is that the closure of the KBO was the single most issue that has obviously ignited this whole move to try to split the district. And really, if you look at the whole situation and history of the district, it is nothing new. It's actually come up time again and time again. And with Mr. Manning, one of the things he tries to seem to downplay a lot is the fact that it's going to be a majority Navajo district and just dance around the issue and not really go back to what his original words were when this issue came up. In fact, this is one of the emails that he sent out, and it's attached as one of our exhibits. And the question that he's asking that sort of got a lot of people excited and riled up and mad as hell, pardon my language, is the question that, do you want your child's next teacher to be chosen because of qualifications or tribe of origin? I mean, what sort of message does it send when you use these kind of words? I mean, the boogeyman or the issue that was used to try to stir up a lot of passions and emotions to try to get things to this point was using race as a boogeyman to try to scare people, to say that if you close the Kirtland Business Office and move it to Shiprock, it's going to mean that we're going to fire all the white people, we're going to put in Navajo people, and because you hire Navajo people, they're already less qualified. I mean, what sort of message does that send to children in our district who have that sort of viewpoint? And by the way, such actions have actually never occurred because we treat our hiring practices with a great deal of diligence as well as courtesy. And there's no doubt that we're definitely hiring the best people that we can to fill a lot of these different positions. But at the end of the day, you have to look at what the facts are, and they're very, very clear. I think our district has provided sufficient information and facts to convey the message that what is being requested by the Kirtland group does not meet the requirements under state law. And as far as option A goes, or even option B, when this group originally went around trying to get petition signatures to support a split, they never ever once considered Ojo Amarillo. Ojo Amarillo was an afterthought. That's a fact. And now that we've gotten to this point, it's like, oh, now we'll just bring in Ojo Amarillo because it's a feel-good thing to do. At the time, Ojo Amarillo was not even included as part of these plans. So when you look at the facts, look at the evidence, I hope you sincerely base your decision based on that. Thank you. And next up, we have the Vice President.
Thank you. Please hold your applause. Please hold your applause. Thank you.